I'm Jack Berry, and I'm out here at the Prestwick Village Golf Club at the 100th Michigan Open Championship, and talking today with a guy who wasn't there for the first one, but he has done a lot of research on all of the Michigan Opens, and that's Greg Johnson, who has 4 sections by 25-year sections of the Michigan Open. And Greg, we're going to start with how you got into this project.
Well, really, it was I met with I've been representing the Michigan PGA and running a press room and doing the press each day and providing it to media outlets. And so we sat down to plan for this year's Michigan Open, which we always try to do something a little different or special. And we said, well, we got to come up with something because it's the 100th. And so while they worked on finding the site and getting the sponsor and all that's tied up, I just decided to do a research project. And then I decided to do it in 25-year segments. And I thought that that's doable. That's 4 of them. And then once I got in there, it kind of worked out where there was this really interesting foursome in each one. And so I just tied each one to a foursome once I got going. And it could have done more. You could have done a sixsome because there were so many characters along the way. But found some really interesting stories. And some were just, a lot of people already know what Walter Hagen did, but not too many people knew that Marv Stahl was, Bing Crosby's buddy and stuff like that. So there was some interesting stuff that popped up.
Well, that's terrific. I'll tell you, Greg did a super job at the Grand Rapids Press for many years, and then the press, like so many of the newspapers around, just kind of shrunk. But Greg has been representing practically every golf interest in Michigan for the last couple of years now, and if we're glad that he is doing it as a former rep myself back in my days at the News and the Free Press. It's really wonderful what Greg is doing. And now we're going to start with the first 25 years, which is Hagen, Leo Daigle. Who else? We got Al Watrous and Marv Stahl.
All 4 really that I picked for that area, Hagen, Daigle, and Watrous and Stahl, are all interesting characters. Hagen obviously was maybe the most flamboyant golfer ever, period. I mean, he kind of set the standard. He was at Oakland Hills for a little while, but he decided to take his show on the road because he knew he was a show, and he did all the things they said he did. He showed up in tuxedos, he drank all night, and who knows who drove him to the golf course, and he didn't know where his car was, and all those things. He did them, but he also played incredible golf.
Didn't set out to be a millionaire. He said he just wanted to live like one. He had a yen for long, powerful, expensive cars. He was known as a man who liked to party and spread hospitality. His career began here at the Country Club of Rochester as a caddy when he was just 7 years old. By 19, he was the head professional, and at 21, he won the U.S. Open. By the time his career was finished, he had won more than 75 championships, including 5 PGA titles, 4 in succession.
And,
well, the thing was that the golf tournaments in those days, the purses were like next to zero, and he went out and did like shows, and he was a good showman. He built the purse.
He really did. He started exhibition golf, exhibition sports. He did a lot. He had a lot to do with that, just because people realized he could collect money from country clubs, and there were just great characters in there, and then Al Watrous, incredible record. I mean, probably the most dominant golfer in our state's history, really, because he did it against top competition. His 15 majors aren't spread around to a bunch of tournaments. It was 2. It was the Michigan Open and the Michigan PGA, the 2 biggest tournaments, probably the most competitive fields we have each year. And he won them, and he won 15 of those combined, which is incredible.
And very strong fields.
Oh, really strong fields. Just, he was playing against a tremendous, great players, John Barnum and on and on. It was really, that era was, there were probably 20 guys from the first 50 years of the Michigan Opens winners that were on tour, a regular basis, and winning on tour. So Chick Harbert and everybody. You can go. I was trying to do other notable ones, and I couldn't stop in the first 25 years. It was like, oh, there's too many.
Well, Leo Diego, who I don't think has ever gotten the publicity that he really should have, because he was a U.S. Open champion.
Right, and U.S. Open. I mean, come on, people don't even realize there's a guy from Michigan who won the U.S. Open. There's actually two of them, and they're he was an amazing player, and I guess he was kind of a quiet guy. He didn't really, he got overshadowed all the time by Hagen. He beat Hagen a couple of times in the PGA, National PGA in match play, and everybody was just, the story the next day was about how Hagen lost. They didn't even mention who beat him. It was just that Hagen lost. So it was, and it was just ironic that Hagen and both of them worked here in Michigan and really spent the rest of their lives here in Michigan.
Best of luck to you today.
Thanks, same to you.
All right, fine.
We want to, we've got great pleasure in playing on a jolly fine course.
So we have a fine golf course here.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Eagle is driving from the first tee. Abe Mitchell is now driving from the first tee.
Good drive.
Eagle putting. Watch his peculiar stance. Eagle putting again. Abe Mitchell putting on the last green. Eagle wins the match by 1 up.
And how about Marv Stahl?
Marv Stahl, this incredible character who he was working in business, and he had been orphaned as a child, and he decided to get into business, and his mentor, I guess, got him caddying, because he said, you need a job, so let's caddy on weekends. And that's how he met his eventual boss, Sparks, who was a big industrialist in Grand Rapids. Anyway, and then he took up golf along the way playing, and he got great at it, and then he became a club professional. He got hired at Blythefield Country Club in Grand Rapids. And then all of a sudden he's spending the winters in California, and he meets Bing Crosby and all these, basically all of Bing's cronies. Bob Hope. He gave lessons to Bob Hope. He became their teacher and their buddy, and then he played with them in the clam bake, and which became the Bing Crosby AT&T and the AT&T and now, but just on and on. And so he was the teacher to the stars. They even called him that in California. And to realize he was from Grand Rapids, and he died in Grand Rapids, and lived in a condo by Cascade Hills at the end of his life, and that was his story. He was an interesting guy.
How about another PGA champion, Chick Harbert, longtime pro at Meadowbrook?
Well, you know what? I never did hit it as far as Chick.
Who did?
And who did, right? So anyway, Chick was one of the stalwarts here in Michigan for a long time at Meadowbrook, and he had a very awkward grip. You'd have to look at his pictures it's tough to describe. His thumbs were off the shaft, and he had a different grip, and he had the air about him, and he was a good player, and he had a lot of confidence in himself, and he could do anything, and he did. So it was a pleasure. I got tangled with him a couple of times. I didn't beat him. I know I finished runner-up to him once in the Michigan PGA. Couldn't catch him, but he certainly was a great asset to the state of Michigan, that's for sure.
Well, I think he still holds some scoring records in the various state tournaments, and nobody hit it farther. And Chick did not lack in self-confidence. And for the next quarter century, you did Horton Smith, John Barnum, Walter Berkmo, and Dave Hill. Now, what a classy group that is.
Yeah, it's really, I kind of talked about how it went from golf from, Walter Hagen's day just being kind of a select sport, and then it got a little more national notice, and then once the Masters started, and Horton Smith was the winner of the first Masters, so
the third,
so it made sense to put him in there.
In golf, the champion of the Masters earns the coveted green jacket. Well, now you can own one, and not just any jacket, but the one given to the first winner of the Masters. And as Terrell Brown reports, many collectors of golf memorabilia had no idea where it was until now.
To win the Masters, as Australia's Adam Scott did this spring, is to reach the pinnacle of professional golf. And the prize, the green jacket, the most sought after in the sport. The first green jacket was awarded to Sam Snead in 1949, but he wasn't the prestigious tournament's first champion. That title belongs to Horton Smith, who won in 1934 and again in 1936. 15 years before the green jacket became synonymous with Augusta.
And he came here after he served in the military, and really after his main playing career, and was a club pro here then. And he won. He won the Michigan Open. So I included him because I thought he's golf history walking down the street. Plus, everything in golf education is named after him. Every state section, PGA section in the country gives a Horton Smith Award to the leading person on golf education. The national PGA does too, and so obviously he's had an incredible impact on the game.
The thing I remember about him is he had huge hands, and he put his hands around the golf club. The golf club couldn't even see it.
Horton Smith, the troubleshooter.
There are days when every golfer feels that he should have stood in bed, when his every swing seems to have a duffer on one end and a divot on the other, and when his cry of four is followed by a cry of phooey as he windmills through 18 holes of what was once his favorite pastime. Even Horton Smith, eminent professional, has to take to the practice grass upon occasion. Here at Pinehurst, North Carolina, he shakes a few kinks out of his irons preparatory to taking to the tee.
Even see it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never met him. I didn't know that.
And he was a great putter, a great putter.
They did say he was the first guy to really study putting,
yes, and
decide that could be a huge advantage if you really studied greens and putting and the putting stroke and all that. And he did it, and a lot of people followed suit. And then John Barnum, I picked him. He was he kind of became famous because after age 50, after he'd worked at Blythefield, another Blythefield pro, he had gone out on the tour and he played it, and he won the Texas Open, which then was a PGA Tour event, and so he was the first guy over 50, and there's only been two of them to win their first event after that age on the PGA Tour. And also he did it with a ping putter, which made him even more, because the ping putter went on to become incredibly famous, and they catalog them all and they record all the victories that ping putters had, and number one is John Barnum. So I thought he was kind of remarkable, and he played really great in the Michigan Open. He was a dominant player. They said he never lost in the local West Michigan section. He was just dominant.
I love to see him. He walked like majestically, like the Queen Mary or something, crossing the ocean, just so smooth. Big guy, real big guy, and just so smooth.
Yeah, and they said he could hit it a mile, and he was really cocky. He would, somebody would get introduced on the first tee, and he'd look at him and say, "I'm impressed." He wasn't impressed at all. So he mostly impressed himself. And then,
how about Big John Barnum from over in Grand Rapids?
Well, Big John, and Big John is right. That's the way he was. He's a big man, And he had that little gait. He had a special walk that a lot of the pros used to imitate him, and yourself, you've done a pretty good job imitating John's walk. He had a special gait about him, and he was a big man. I don't know, he must have been 6'5" or 6" at least. And but he could play. He was a friend of Walter Berkmo. They traveled together, him and the Abriel brothers. They were always traveling together and played together at practice rounds. And John was from Blythefield on the west side of the state here in Michigan, and a pro there for many, many years. I forget how long he'd been there, but he's still one of our outstanding players in the state of Michigan all these years.
Walter Berkmo, who's another just a great name from
local guy, from Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit guy, Polish Hall of Fame. And really a talented guy. I guess he could have done any sport he wanted. He was, but essentially they said he was an incredible athlete, and from what I could find, he was a dominant player. He went out on tour and won. He came home and worked as a club pro. He really dedicated himself to the job. The people at his clubs loved him, which is a big thing, because they don't always like the guys that go off and play all the time, but they liked this guy. So that means he had both sides of the job covered.
Well, he was terrific. He was at Franklin Hills, and then he was at Detroit Golf Club for a long time, and he was one of the greatest match players of all time. That's where the PGA Championship was, that match play back in those days, and he wanted that match play, and so did Chick Harbert. But we mentioned Stahl about being out as the teacher to the stars. Walter Berkmo was in that very same class out there at Palm Springs. Yeah, he was very big out there.
The Michigan Golf Hall of Fame roster is loaded with major championship winners, and Gene, you've played with a number of them. How about Walter Berkmo?
Walter, you couldn't help but like Walter. Walter was a friend of everybody, had a great heart. He'd help anybody out that was ever in trouble. I know there's some stories on the tour with any caddies that were down and out. He'd be one of the first one in line to go to the hip, as they say, and he would help them out. And but a great player, and if you watch him, there's something about him that he could have won more, I felt, because of his ability. But he's very casual, but he excellent player.
But I met Dave Hill several times and wrote about him several times, and he played on the senior tour in Grand Rapids. But he's just such a great character, and the things he said and did. I mean, he played his best U.S. Open was the one where he criticized the golf course as a cow pasture, at Hazeltine, Tyne.
Now we're talking. You grew up on a farm, 66-acre farm. We're talking about corn, and one of your more famous famous quotes was up at Hazeltine when you said.
That's right. Open.
You said
hip
what?
Palm of his mouth. I just said they ruined a good cow pasture. That's all. A good corn. I said they ruined a good farm. That's what I said. They ruined a good farm.
And a few years later, didn't Trent Jones ask you back up there?
Well, they made. Yeah, I went back up there. They made 32 changes in an 18-hole golf course. So I had to be right. Yeah. And they turned it into a wonderful golf course, because I was up there when
they had the Open when Payne
Stewart won it.
Right.
And I'd played it the year before when the U.S. Open, the senior U.S. Open was in Chicago at Medina, and then the next year the regular tournament was at the seniors U.S. the regular U.S. Open was at Medina.
Right.
Then they went from there up to Hazeltine, and I went and played Hazeltine, and what a beautiful change they made,
Well, it just shows you that they're not always right the first time, are they?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It was, everybody agreed, Like I tell everybody, I got all my lines from Arnold Palmer because I played with he and Ray Floyd the first 2 days.
And they weren't quoted.
No.
Or not as colorfully as you.
But I can tell you that the second day, first day was cold, windy, and I three-putted the last 3 holes to shoot 75, and then we had to tee off real early in the morning, and we get in, and I'm upstairs with my buddy. We're having lunch, and they kept coming and bugging me about going to the press, and I told them I didn't want to go to the press because, they weren't going to like what I had to say. And so I finally go over there, and by that time I'd had 2 or 3 vodkas and 7-Ups, and I didn't really give a darn what I said, because I knew I had to go practice. And so I walk in the locker room after the interview, and Arnold says, where have you been? And I said, well, Arnold, I've been over in the press stand telling them what a wonderful, fantastic, unbelievable golf course they had. He jumped right out of it. He sat with Bob Rosberg. And he jumped out of his chair and he said, you little SOB. He said, I thought if anybody would tell them what they had here, you would. I said, well, Arnold, you may have to apologize to me tomorrow morning.
It's like that all the time, and he got me really good in Grand Rapids once, because it was like the second tournament in Grand Rapids, the senior tour, and Dave and Massengale had come in with a good score, and Dave was on 18T, and he hit a drive, and it hit a top of a tree and went out of bounds. There's a range right next there, and it went out of bounds at the Old Highlands, and so of course, everybody's looking at me, and I'm the Grand Rapids guy, so I got to ask him the hard question at the end. So I asked him, hey, did you consider another option there? And he just called me a you-know-what that you can't repeat, and said I wasn't playing for second place, and that was it was pure Dave Hill. And so, but 5 minutes later, he's talking to me and answering my question. It was the timing and having to do it in front of the TV cameras was not good.
He was great. He was a great long iron player. He and George Knudsen, who was his buddy, the Canadian, were great long iron players. And to watch them, they were like artists with the 2 irons or 1 iron, which, we've lost that these days. And we can't forget Dave's younger brother, not much more younger, a year and something or other, Mike Hill, because Mike was a terrific player and won on the tour. He had a number of tour victories, and then as a senior, he partnered with Lee Trevino, and they were one of the top group in the all those team tournaments that they have on the senior tour.
Oh yeah, Mike was really a tremendous senior player, and it's just Dave, because of his comments. Dave was always a news story waiting to happen because he would say something. He's the guy we like to be around. We got to talk to Dave Hill because he might say something. And
he usually did.
Yeah, and Mike was quiet. In fact, Mike, when he said something, was usually he's mad at you because you wrote about Dave instead of him. So it was different guys. but they were both really talented. The Jackson, they were the Jackson boys, and they were always really good. And
Country Club of Jackson has done a great job in bringing along their caddies and then moving them up into the stardom. And it's still one of the top clubs in Michigan now.
How about the Hill brothers, Dave and Mike from Jackson?
Oh boy, you got two boys there that created quite a record for themselves. And Dave jumped out of the box there pretty quick and did very well. And of course played the Ryder Cup team, and he was probably the best putter I had ever seen. To me, I just felt he could make a putt from anywhere. I don't think he'd ever miss, and he had confidence, which you must have when you play that league. And of course, Mike was probably the most consistent through the years, and of course did marvelously well. And of course ended up on the senior tour and doing excellent. And 2 great players. I guess they're still in the golf business. I think they own their own golf course, and they maintain it and keep it going. Once in a while, you'll see Mike's name jump up on the senior tour, but and play once in a while. But 2 great, that family, great golfers.
Well, we're with Jim Cole, a past president of the Meadowbrook Country Club, here in the grill, and Jim has a lot of history stocked in his mind about this club and everything that's happened here. Jim, tell us a little bit about what we see here behind us.
All right. As I understand the situation, a year or 2 ago at a local golf exposition, Chick Harbert, his 2 daughters, approached our club manager, identified themselves, told him that they, of course, had grown up around the club and would like to come back and see it, and could that be arranged? He, of course, said it could be. And when they came over, they brought with them some memorabilia, if I've said that correctly, relating to their dad. And so on the wall behind us, 1942 of Chick, who is second from left in the picture, with Bing Crosby, Jimmy DeMeritt, and Byron Nelson. Beneath that, we have the 1949 U.S. Ryder Cup team, Chick Harbert being second from the right in that photo. And then if we go over here to the two photos on the right, we have the 1955 Ryder Cup team meeting with President Dwight Eisenhower in the White House.
And Chick was the captain.
Captain of that team. And then we have the 1955 Ryder Cup team with Captain Chick Harbert in the center. And then finally, due completely to serendipity, my wife and I have a daughter that lives in Sarasota, and one of her best friends in her subdivision is married to Paul Azinger's manager. So for this year's Ryder Cup team, where Paul Azinger is, of course, the captain, Tommy Elliott, his manager, had made up this montage of the photos of all of the Ryder Cup captains, and those that are still living have signed the original. The original is in Mr. Azinger's possession, but Tommy was kind enough to make this copy for us in our club.
That's pretty good, more than a souvenir. That is outstanding. And Chick was the golf professional here at Meadowbrook for a long time, and he was known for his prodigious tee shots. And this was back in the days when it was persimmon and the balls weren't always exactly round. But tell us a little about Chick and his driving exploits.
What I know of it, I learned secondhand, and that is that he was invited back at age 70. And our first hole measures some 330 yards, and it was said that at age 70 he could still drive the green.
When you came back and got into being the club pro's life, that seemed like your game really picked up then, and you were a dominant figure here in Michigan golf at a time when Walter Berkemo was still playing. Mike Suchak was the pro at Oakland Hills, and you won the Michigan Open successive years, 1965, 66. You won the PGA Championship. You won virtually everything. What were those days like?
Well, for a couple of years there, things seemed to work pretty good. I was more at ease. I don't think I was trying as hard, trying to win all the time. Not that that's not bad, but maybe you can go over the edge a little bit, and I seemed more relaxed and had a different attitude for whatever reasons. And putts started going in, and next thing you know, I had a couple good seasons here, which was very nice, and enjoyed the tournament golf. I always enjoyed tournament golf, but you only enjoy it best when you're playing respectable. You know, not too happy when you're not doing too good.
And then we move on to Randy Erskine, Lynn Jansen, Buddy Witten, Jack Seltzer, and you're close to with all of them.
Yeah, and you're getting into my era there. When I actually started covering him, I got out of Michigan State in 1980, and 1982 was my first Michigan Open, and Buddy Witten won it, and he won in '83 again. So obviously I got to know him, and he was another Blythefield pro. There's a Blythefield theme here. It wasn't on purpose. It just kind of works out that way. They had famous pros, and Randy Erskine, of course, was the guy who was still coming home from the tour then, and was a great player. And I met him at my first Buick Open. So it was. I meet all these people, and then Jack Seltzer was a great character. Jack Seltzer was he was kind of Michigan's own version of Dave Hill, at home, and he had gone to Florida some, but he came back and he always had a quip, and he had that incredible hole-in-one on the 9th hole at the Bear to win the Michigan Open, which was which was really cool. And it was not only that, that day they had put the pin in the wrong place because a bird had gone to the bathroom in the wrong spot, and they were using white spots to identify the flag placement. And the greenskeeper put it where the bird stuff was, and so that they went out and changed it really fast because they said, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not in the right place. That's not where it's supposed to be on the last day at the Bear. It's not in that easy spot. It's in the hard spot in the back." And so they went out and changed it, and he made a hole-in-one.
And it was on TV.
Yeah, it was on TV too. That was back when there was television going. It was amazing. Yeah, it was ESPN's early days, and it was play of the day and the whole thing. It was great. It was big news for the Michigan Open. That was probably the Michigan Open's biggest moment.
We're live at the Bear at Grand Traverse Resort in Acme, Michigan. I'm Michael Patrick Shields with the newest father and son dynamo, Jack and John Seltzer. Just came off the course. Jack in an unfamiliar role as caddy for his son John, when Jack's usually making all the noise, having won the event in 1987.
Correct. This was fun today. It's fun for 2 days. I would have preferred to play golf, but if I'm not, loved to work with John, and we had a great time. He played great yesterday. Today we had a little trouble, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Before we go to John, let's talk back in 1987 when you did play 4 most excellent rounds. What were the circumstances about that day, and what do you remember most?
Well, what I remember most was I'd had the lead the year before every day until the last hole where Tim Matthews hit it close and won by a shot. And then the following year I led every round again. And I came into the ninth hole. I had just bogeyed 8, came into the ninth hole and ended up tied with Mark McNiff. And I made ace on 9 and then shot 32 on the back to win by 6. So that was an awful lot of fun, especially making the hole-in-one on the last day.
Talk about a momentum.
Well, Jack came from Flint, which had the great junior program there. A lot of top players out on tour, and have a number of them that are in the Michigan Golf Hall of Fame now, including Larry Mancour, who's now up in the practically the upper peninsula, the top of the mitten, and Elaine Crosby. Who else we got up from?
Oh, let's see. The Jackson area has all those, and then the Flint area has the Seltzers and Jeff Roth, and there's it goes on, and Larry Mancour obviously, and we've had these little sections, and John Lindholm, and they've all played in the Michigan Open. They just all haven't won it. But
Steve Brown, who's Golf Association of Michigan president, and he came up through that, and then he ran the Flint Junior event for a long time, and went on to the American Junior Golf Association before he came home here.
Yeah, those guys are more in your memory because you covered all those guys. But I met these guys. Lynn Jansen, of course, was a Egypt Valley pro, and Greenridge before that, same club. But got to know him. I always had to write about Lynn and Buddy, and if one of them led and the other one didn't, or if the story on Tuesday when Lynn led was shorter than the story on Wednesday when Buddy led, I'd hear it from members. I'd get 50 calls. One time Lynn shoots a 63 in a charity classic event in Grand Rapids. Lynn shoots a 63. I'm supposed to write about Freddie Couples because he's been brought in. He's the big NCAA phenom, and he's on the pro tour, and he hits it a mile. He shoots 63 too. So I write all about that because I'm following him all day. I don't even know Lynn shot 63. Oh, I went to play Egypt Valley. It was Greenridge then. I went to play Greenridge on Sunday with my father-in-law. Oh man, I had to leave. Those ladies weren't going to leave me alone. They came out of the clubhouse charging. It was not good, but Lynn has been a great friend. He's still working in the business, owns a golf course in Hastings. Tremendous player, maybe the best 100-yard player, from 100 yards, and he was incredible. Great putter, great chipper, and really, really great wedge game. And he still can teach that, and he is. And we always joked if Buddy hit the driver incredibly well and long irons really well. If we could put Buddy and Lynn together, they would have won everything. But they were competitors, but they were really friends. People thought, oh, they can't get along. They got along great, and two different personalities, but great guys. And of course Randy Erskine, he could be the model of a golf professional. I mean, he's good looking. He's a great player. He's great in the shop because everybody likes him. You walk in and he goes, "Hey, if you got a gamer, who do you want to play with today?" And he's always positive. He's always friendly. And then if you play with him in a pro-am, I played with him in a pro-am during the senior tour days in Grand Rapids, and he's the best pro-am partner I ever had over the legends. I've played with, Trevino and on, Lee Jansen and Rocco Mediate, and Randy Erskine's the best one ever.
Terrific. I think Randy's going to like that.
I'm Jack Berry, and I'm at the Michigan Golf Hall of Fame with one of the Hall of Famers, Randy Erskine, longtime golf professional. He was a pretty good player as an amateur, too, and he's won about everything that there is to win in Michigan, and he's won it more than once. Well, you've played so well here in Michigan, winning the Michigan Open, winning the PGA Championship. What was some of those years like? I remember you were one of the first years up on the Bear that you won up there.
That was probably my most exciting win. I'd won the Michigan Open previously on the resort course, and then they opened the Bear, and I never broke 82 in my 2 practice rounds, and I was scared to death. I said, I'm going to miss the cut. I'd never missed a cut in Michigan at that point in any tournament, and I thought, I'm going to miss the cut. Well, we did play a Pro-Am that Sunday, I think, and I finally shot 75, but I'd been playing the back tees, which we didn't play in the tournament. So once I got used to the normal tees, and I won the tournament at 2 or 3 over par, and that was a great score back then because I think I won by 1 over Ken Allard. So to win at the Bear was very exciting. And then another thing was exciting. Jack Nicklaus wrote me a letter congratulating me, Randy, and good going at the Bear.
Hi, I'm Jack Berry, and I'm here with a young fellow that I remember from, back in the 1960s, Ken Devine, who was a longtime executive director of the Michigan section of the PGA and is well known in golf as one of the top salesmen back in the days when we had a lot more golf companies going around. Well, we're talking about a little about the 50s and the 60s, which were actually post-war. 20 years or so after the big war, golf was really strong, and especially in the Detroit area and in Michigan. And we had some great players back then. We had a couple of PGA champions, as a matter of fact, Chick Harbert and Walter Berkemo.
Yeah, I mean, you go back, Jack, to Oakland Hills. At one time, I guess. What was his name? The old guy, Al Watrous. There was a great player. He used to tangle with Harbert, and he was older then, but he was still playing. I remember the first time I called on him when I was a salesman before I went into management, which was one of my biggest mistakes, by the way. Before he'd even look at my line, I had to go down and watch him hit balls on the range. So I'm sitting there in the dirt. Al Watrous.
Al Watrous? Did you have a lot of time? No one hit more balls than Al.
He wouldn't even look at the line. Actually, Tommy Cosmos, he wouldn't let Tommy look at the line until I watched him hit balls. And that was a daily venture whenever I went to call on him. So it's a bit of history. I'm glad we're doing this. It's been a long time since I've talked about this.
Back, remembering Chick, who was the longest driver of his time, Dustin Johnson and Jason Day would be be in the same company with Chick, who used to drive the first hole at Meadowbrook along 8 Mile Road.
At Meadowbrook, regularly, and he was hitting it with persimmon drivers, and it was fiber inserts. They weren't even Cycolac then, and heavy true temper shafts. So he'd be hitting it right today with these guys.
Now tell me, you're a good club man, golf clubs, the playing, the instruments. Now how did you get into that?
Well, Chet Jawar got me started. I was between opportunities at the time, and Chet called me one day, I guess it was a Sunday afternoon. He says, "Ken, I'd like to get in the golf business." I said, "I'd love to get in the golf business, Chet, but I don't want to work for you, Chet." So he said, "No, there's a guy in here from the First Flight Golf Company looking for a sales rep." And I never heard of First Flight. Most people didn't hear of First Flight, but it was a step in the golf division. So I took the territory, Michigan and Northern Ohio, and then they were brave enough to promote me to district manager and then vice president of sales and marketing, and then I went to the PGA Golf Company and wrapped it all up. Well, I had, 15 years with the Michigan PGA. So we wrapped that up in 2004. But all of those years, Jack, I called on these guys we're talking about, Horton Smith. But Chick in general he used to come over every now and then to play as Horton Smith's guest. And I caddied in his foursome one day. And I could not believe how far he hit the golf ball. I mean, he was hitting it 30 yards past Horton Smith in those days. And that's with the wound ball, with the liquid center. And he'd be out there with him today. And he was colorful on the golf course.
Well, it's kind of a different era. Nowadays, club pros are at the club, whereas if they were, a player with a lot of talent, as those fellows were back in, that were talking in the 40s and 50s, there wasn't enough money on the tour. The purses were so small. The Motor City Open started, $25,000 purse. Ben Hogan won the first one, and Kerry Middlecoff won, and Chick played in that.
Chick finished, I just looked at it today, Chick finished 35th and was out of the money. 34th got $70. $70.
It's unbelievable in today's purses with the,
and then they'd all jump into their station wagons and load all the stuff in and take off driving. Yeah, Jack, that's how I got started. Chet Jawar, and I've thought about him all my life. And he was a good, dear friend. I mean, very close. He and his wife, Kathy, I loved him. So.
Well, we had that Motor City Open going for, I think it was about 12 years, 11 or 12 years, until the Buick came along with the big dollar and kind of doubled the purse size. And
yeah, well, that was almost as big as when Dick Wakefield signed a $50,000 contract, or Nicklaus signed that $40,000 with McGregor. Everybody thought they were nuts.
Well, what about the Michigan Open back in those days?
Well, my first one would have been in 1991. Okay, and it was up at Grand Traverse, and I think Michigan Bell sponsored it at that time, but I think it was Michigan Bell. And it was my first venture with the section here, and of course I didn't know many of the pros. You know the situation I was when I took it over, but yeah, I remember Steve Brady and all of these guys that were all young kids then. I see them, they're in the Hall of Fame now. Right. He's the director of golf there, which is unbelievable. So I look at these guys. But anyway, back to what you're talking about. All of the kids that would have become PGA professionals now and started working in these golf shops are playing these mini tours. So all the good players, like we used to have back in the 50s, 60s, where they used to be club professionals and then go play golf, and they were respected.
Well, back in Chick's days, Bergamo's days, they had winter jobs. Chick was down in Florida, and I think Walter was out of Palm Springs, and they got in with all the stars, with all the big names. Yeah. So, and then get into some tournaments down in Florida, California, down in the sunspots in the wintertime.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Walter loved the stars. Oh, and he'd tell you about them, too. Senior, we used to call Walter. Well, I know my first year on the road here, we had 4 guys, and I could test my memory, but 4 guys had their Ryder Cup bags hanging up in the golf shop. So, the golf professional was a hero back in those days. Today they fold shirts a lot, but they give a lot of lessons. They keep the game going, and they're more dedicated to the game of golf than those guys were, because they were making enough money to get back on the tour. Right. So it's a change. Everything's changed, Jack, as you know.
Well, Chick, he won, played in the Ryder Cup. He won his match. He became the captain. He won again. So that was when now the captains are always guys that come off the tour. That changed a lot. I mean, Walter Hagen was captain for about 20 years or something like that. And he was right. He basically had been a club pro, but was smart enough to get out and do a lot of exhibitions to get a good salary and get a good car. And And now we're in the fourth quarter of the 100 years of the Michigan Open. Who have we got here? Let's see, Greg, we've got Steve Brady, yep. J.R. Roth, Scott Hebert, Ryan Brem, guys who are all still in it.
All really still good players. And Steve played in this tournament, Steve Brady, and J.R. Roth obviously can't anymore because he lives now in New Mexico. He just qualified for the senior U.S. Open, by the way. Scott Hebert is not playing this week because the National Club Pro is next week, and he didn't want to take 2 weeks off from his club and don't want to lose the main job. It's like, make sure you get paid on Friday. And then Ryan Brem, of course, is in the U.S. Open. He's at Erin Hills this week. So, and all these guys are multiple winners. Hebert obviously has won 6. He tied Al Watch's record. So, he says he still has one more in him. He goes, if I can figure out a way to beat the college kids and the mini tour guys, I'll get I'll get my other one yet. But anyway, Steve Brady was here this week. He's a consummate gentleman. He's at Oakland Hills now. He's the head professional there now. Long teaching career. He tried 16 times to make the tour. He went to Q school, the old traditional Q school, 16 times. That's bloodletting. That's like doing a bloodletting 16 times. I can't believe he did that, but you can tell he's been shaped by that character. He's a gentleman and a great guy. He's humble, and he loves to teach and talk golf.
Obviously, if Oakland Hills would hire him to succeed Pat Criswell, why you know that he's top drawer.
Oh, you're right. You do. It seems like every Oakland Hills pro ends up in the Hall of Fame. Steve kind of did it a different way. He did it with his play. So,
yeah, we have Mike Suchak.
Yeah, Mike and Hagen, and we can go back. Yeah, you can list them off. Yeah.
So that's.
We got J.R. Roth. He's always been an interesting character.
Yes, he's from Northville area, and J.R. grew up playing, I think, at Meadowbrook a lot, and then he became a professional, and he's become remarkable. He kind of blossomed just a little bit later, I think, in winning the championships.
Yeah, he did. He was like in his late 30s and 40s when he became a dominant player, and and really he's still a really good player. He's in his 50s and just a little bit of a different guy, kind of quiet and yet really confident. A great putter. I mean, he could really putt, and you knew when his putting stroke was on, it really didn't matter where he hit his drive because he was going to get it somewhere near the green, and he was going to make the 12-footer. So you weren't out of the hole, and nice man. He's always been really nice to me. I still talk to him every once in a while. I see him at tournaments, and he's tied with Watrous and Hebert. They all three have 15 majors in the Michigan section now. So he still really wants that, but he only gets one chance a year. It's the Tournament of Champions. So he comes back and tries to win that every time. But of course, he's got to beat Hebert, and he's got to beat everybody else who shows up for that too.
Talking about the Michigan Open and J.R. Roth, who spent his growing up years at Meadowbrook.
Took a lot of paychecks home. He took a lot of paychecks. Sure. As a matter of fact, I still communicate with him. He's out in New Mexico now. So yeah, he was quite a player. Funny story on him that when we went spikeless, or not spikeless, but what we called it spikeless. So I'm just going to keep calling it spikeless. Stephen Kircher came to me. We were playing the Tournament of Champions in a couple events up there at Boyne, yeah. And he said to me that he would like to sponsor a tournament, and he would put up X $1,000 if they would go with this new spikeless thing. Okay, so the dollar signs clicked. I said, I can. He said, do you think you can make it happen? Do you think those guys will do it? I said, well, just make it. They can't tee off unless they do it. So I had to go home and sell that. And believe it or not, I sold it to Jack Seltzer, who went in to win a couple of those things. So we did do that. And I'll never forget, Roth and somebody else stood up at our section spring meeting and said that I was going to get blamed for killing some of the players. They said I'm going to go to jail. Some of the players are going to get killed out there. And Roth would never go fully spikeless. He would leave one spike And I couldn't throw him out of the tournament for one spike, but he wouldn't, he wouldn't give in that it was the way to go. And I drove across the bridge out here at Western, and the sign is still up there: careful walking across the bridge with soft spikes. And they haven't taken it down. But yeah, okay, so JR and
How about Scott Hebert?
Scott Hebert is
the man from Escanaba who came down to the Lower Peninsula and has dominated.
I remember when he was a valet parking my car when I would go up there. All right? At Grand Traverse. Yep. At Grand Traverse.
He was an assistant pro there.
Yep.
Then he became, I think, head pro, and now he's at Traverse City Country.
Right. And I used to kid him every time I give him a winner's check. I say, take this money, go play the tour, and leave our purse alone here. And he kept winning the money.
The big winner, 50-year-old Bob Ackerman. Bob, come on up. Let's start giving you all this stuff, and then you can say a few words. So, Bill, and where's Andrew? Andrew, would you come on back up and help us with the presentation? Right here? Okay, gentlemen, would you one of each on each side of Bob, and let's start with the crystal here, and hand him that if you would, please.
Can I lift it off the...
You can lift it off the base, certainly. You're the general manager. You can do whatever you want. You run the damn place.
And we've had a lot of good venues for the Michigan Open over the years.
Oh, tremendous venues. And, he was in JR won at the Bear, which is kind of the golden era. There were, 26 of them, I think, in a row there. And at that resort, 23 on the Bear. And the Bear was just, the Paul Nine, the original developer, said, Jack Nicklaus, build me the hardest golf course in Michigan, the hardest golf course you can make. And Jack didn't really want to, but he did it. And when it first opened with the tall grass, and I know you kept a best ball that first tournament, it was incredible.
It was like 81, 82 or something like that.
Yeah, that was the worst ball, right?
Yeah,
the worst ball.
Worst ball.
And there were huge scores. Well, JR made a 12 on the fourth hole in one of his Michigan Opens, and he ends up being in the Hall of Fame, and he won it. So anybody can make a 12. So don't give up if you make a 12. And just a relentless competitor. That's the one thing I think about.
I'm Michael Patrick Shields, live at Grand Traverse Resort and Spa, the Bear, right behind me. The last Michigan Open at the Bear after 26 years, and I've been fortunate enough to be here for the last 10 or so. And I got to tell you, I'm going to miss it for certain here. It was like a rite of spring, or a rite of summer, if you will, to come here to idyllic Traverse City and have the first big major event of the year right here, just a few hundred yards from the East Bay of Grand Traverse Bay, on this toughest golf course in the state of Michigan, with the toughest field in the state of Michigan, and have over 200 of the top amateurs and professionals going at it for 4 days, was a real gas. And to have it in this setting was a fantastic escape, and I'm going to miss it, frankly. But I think it's ironic that Scott Hebert, who has won the Michigan Open 6 times, tied with Al Watrous, was looking at his last opportunity to win the Michigan Open here on his home course. He's the head professional here at Grand Traverse and grew up around these parts, and he won the Michigan Open here 6 other times. He would have had one more chance at the Michigan Open to surpass Al Watrous, and it would have happened right behind me, and he was well underway, just 4 shots behind after the opening round, when his wife Lori decided it was time to have their second child. So he withdrew from the tournament. And that, to me, is sort of touching, because as we see, things come to an end, and they come to new life, and they start all over again. And we put everything in perspective when we hear a story like that. And so the Michigan Open will move to Orchard Lake Country Club, where it will get new life. And at the same time, we'll always remember these great days with Jack Saylor and all the other many great writers and reporters who came through here and enjoyed themselves very much and enjoyed watching this great golf. We never played any good golf, but we sure enjoyed watching it, and we sure enjoyed getting together and renewing our friendships and renewing our admiration for the folks who put the hours in on the practice range, go through the qualifying, and come here to the Michigan Open and enjoy their moment in the sun. The Bear has enjoyed its moment in the sun for 26 years, and now we move on. So.
And the venue is always, I guess, part of the story. But in that that last 25 years, the Bear was kind of the dominant place, and a lot of people still wish it was there because it turned into a family vacation for 200 golf pros.
Well, it's like they like the Michigan Amateur to be at Charlevoix at Belvedere, and I know that my daughters, in all the years that I was covering golf, when with the Amateur was up at Belvedere, why, that was their vacation week.
Yeah, you're right. And well, Scott Hebert, he actually worked there. He's a little different story. He was working at the Bear as a bag kid, just out of Ferris. He actually didn't graduate in professional golf management. He graduated with a business degree, but he decided he wanted to be in golf, and he had started playing it. He'd always been a baseball player as a kid, but he got into golf, and then he worked in the bag shop there. Met his wife there, who was a waitress in the lounge, and on and on. And he lived in Grand Rapids for a little while, but he went out on the mini tours. He roomed with Chad Campbell, who's a great player on the PGA Tour, and I think he's told me he kind of decided at the end when I couldn't beat my roommate on a regular basis, I knew I was in trouble. It was time to go home, quit paying my roommate. So he was a great player, and obviously he's won 6 Michigan Opens, and he was dominant on the Bear, 4 in a row, which no one had ever done before, and he's still a really good player. He's got the 15 majors, and he's won most of those in the 2 big events, the PGA and the Michigan Open, and a great guy, and still really competitive. He's at Traverse City Country Club now and loves his job. That's probably why he's not playing this week. He wants to make sure he keeps that baby. But great guy. And
one of the great ones that is out on tour right now and playing in the United States Open is Ryan Brehm, the long ball Ryan Brehm.
Right. Well, he was a legend when he was like 15 because he hit it so far. And he's in a golf family up in Mount Pleasant, and Mount Pleasant already had Danny Pohl and Cindy Fig Courier and Kelly Robbins and Doug LaBelle, who's actually playing in the Michigan Open this year. He's home from his PGA Tour days and now works in the family business at home and plays still some, but he's still very competitive. But Ryan was this kid who was, everybody thought automatic stardom, said, well, he hits it farther than Pohl, he putts great, he's tremendous, and he really was a tremendous player. And he's an example of everybody turns pro now. They come out of college, they all turn pro, they're all trying to make it. The odds have gone up, it's astronomically hard, and he stuck it out. He's age 30, and he's in his first full year on the PGA Tour. He's playing in the U.S. Open, so he stuck it out long enough, and everybody thought for sure, oh, he's going to make it. I remember watching him and Brian Stewart, who's also on the tour, and Matt Harmon from Grand Rapids. They're all 3 on the range at an AJGA event up at Traverse City, and everybody's predicting, which one do you think will make the tour first? Because they were all really good. They all had shot like 65, and everybody's saying, oh, Brehm will make it. I don't think Stewart will make it. He doesn't look like he hits it as far as those guys do, And Matt Harmon hits it a long way, too, and became Big Ten Player of the Year at Michigan State and everything with Brehm on the same team, Big Ten champions. But here's Brian Stewart, made it first. And not only that, it's because he hits it straight and he makes every putt he looks at, which, is golf. So
that is the that's the secret. Thanks very much, Greg. We've been talking with Greg Johnson, who's covering golf on all corners of the state of Michigan, and we're very fortunate to have Greg doing this great job.
Thank you, Jack. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, now we're talking with Kevin Helm, who is the man at the helm of the Michigan Open, has been for not all of the 100 years, but I think something like the last 14, and doing a terrific job. The tournament has grown. Everybody enjoys it. And Kevin, you can tell us all about it and how you got into this. How you came up from some other state. I don't know where it was, but anyway, you came up here to pure Michigan, and tell us a little bit about what's been going on for you.
Well, thank you. First, thanks for coming out and covering some of the Michigan Open, our 100th anniversary of the Michigan Open. We're very excited about not only this year's event, but the strong history, rich tradition that this championship has had over the years. As far as me, yeah, it's been my 14th year, I guess, as executive director of the Michigan PGA. Prior to that, I was with the section for 8 additional years, so it feels like I've been here forever. But we've been fortunate. We've had a great staff. We've had great board of directors and officers that have been great leaders over the years. And as you know, we had a few hiccups in the past, but fortunately, we've had a lot of great leadership that's helped guide us out of that time. And now we're doing great. Golf's doing great in Michigan, and this is just one example of what great tournament playing opportunities golfers in Michigan have. Yeah, good. Take your time. I'll be in the circle. Yeah. Outstanding play on a difficult golf course. 16 under par. Champion of the 100th Michigan Open, presented by LaFontaine Automotive Group, Matt Thompson. Traveling trophy, so you can keep that for 1 year, but then it comes back. So you have to, next year you're going to have to bring it back. And when you look at some of the names on there, Matt, I think you'll know you're in great company. Congratulations.
Well, over 100 years, or 100 Michigan Opens, we have had the class of the, not only of Michigan, but of golf in general. These guys, they grew up in the game, grew up as caddies, and then got out. Some of them went right from high school turning pros and into clubs. Some of them went to college, and we can be very, very proud, I think, of all the Michigan professionals who have won the Michigan Open Championship. Well, Chick had a wintertime job down there in Ocean Reef, Florida, and he met some folks he had known from his early days in Dayton. And one of them, Bill Sigenthaler, had the 9-hole Agaming golf course up at beautiful Torch Lake, and he invited Chick to come up, and he wanted the 9 more holes. So Chick went up there and added the nine holes and had a place right there in Torch Lake, and he lived a fine time until finally, time catches all of us, and he passed on.